Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimberly and today we're going to be doing book reviews on the Happy Ever After playlist and Daisy Jones and the Six. Daisy Jones and the Six takes place in the 60s and 70s following a band called the Six and a girl named Daisy Jones. Daisy Jones is this really cool girl. She's a model, she's a muse, she's sneaking into clubs and she's a teenager, and she's extremely carefree and she goes with the flow. This book is the story of how Daisy Jones joins the Six, their rise to fame, and how the band splits up. It's all about the drugs, sex, and rock and roll. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was so fun to read. It was such a quick read. This book is written in an oral history format, which makes it so easy to read. I could not put it down. I think I read through it in like a day or within 24 hours. I just read this like it was a documentary and all of the interviews with each of the band members. I love how the author wrote different perspectives and how everyone kind of remembers something a little differently, and that human aspect of remembering things and how humans are flawed. I love this book so much. It has a special place in my heart. The Happy Ever After playlist is the second book by the author Abby Jiminez, and it follows a girl named Sloane Monroe 2 years after her fiance dies on the second anniversary of Brandon's accident. An adorable dog crashes through Sloane's sunroof at an intersection and changes Sloane's life. Sloane then goes and tries to find the owner, seeing if the dog is chipped. On the collar, the dog's name is Tucker, and she ends up leaving voice messages on this guy's cell phone for like 2 weeks straight. I think it was 10 days before she finally gets an answer. Eventually, she finds the owner, and he is this handsome man, and he's been out of the country for the past 2 weeks, and he still has 2 more weeks before he comes back. So Sloane agrees to take care of Tucker for those 2 weeks, and they end up texting, and the texts lead to phone calls, and then he comes back. Sloane finally meets to get Tucker's owner. His name is Jason, and he has been in Australia on tour. Can Sloane find it in herself to move on from Brandon's death? This book was so fun to read. I enjoyed it. I think I read it within 24 hours as well. Both Daisy Jones and the Six and the Happy Ever After playlist were just such fun reads, and that's why I wanted to review them in the same video. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. This is such an easy and fun book to read. Abby's humor really comes out through her characters. Abby's actually just a really funny person in life. If you don't know who Abby is the owner of Nadia Cakes, and she is the winner of the Cupcake Wars on the Food Network channel. Her cupcakes are amazing. I think my favorite cupcake is in the summertime. They have seasonal flavors and it's the strawberry. I also follow Abby on all of her socials. She's the kind of girl that everyone wants to be friends with. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about these 2 books for now in the non-spoilery section. So if you haven't read these books, if you don't want to be spoiled, then go ahead and click out of the video now, because we're gonna get into some spoilers. Okay, let's explore Daisy Jones and the Six a little bit more. As I said, I really enjoyed the different perspectives that each character brought to this story. It made it so much more vibrant. Each person had such distinct voice that it made it so easy to read and know who was who and how someone talks and their cadence and things like that. I love the 70s rock scene that this story takes place in. So many of the characters have drug problems or alcohol issues, and that just brings some reality to this story. I loved all the talk about music. I love music. I love that there was a lot about songwriting and how Daisy sings and things like that without too much technicality. It makes it easier to understand the music without all of the different technical things that go into it. Reading Daisy Jones and the Six just makes me wish I was backstage watching them perform one of their shows. It made me wish that I knew the songs and I could sing along with them. And it made me wish I could see the energy and the charisma and the connection that we read about with each of the characters, especially between Daisy and Billy on stage. This is the first book I read in an oral history format. Like I said before, it really made it easier for me to visualize each of the characters and also their expressions, not just the things that they say. There are so many great characters in this book, but I particularly want to point out the female. All the women in this book are a badass in their own right. First off, Camilla is a boss. Camilla might be my favorite character, actually. She stands her ground. She goes through so much because Billy is off doing all of these crazy things, and he has a drinking problem, and she's at home with the kids, and he's off on tour. It takes so much strength to be able to hold down the fort, and she does that with so much grace. She's awesome. Daisy is also a really cool character. She is just this effortless, cool, badass chick. Everyone kind of wants to be her. She doesn't even have to try, and she's a model, and it kind of feels like things just come too easy for Daisy. I know that we got a little bit more of her background and that her parents didn't really care about her, and she kind of raised herself, and she was off on her own at a very young age, and that really toughened her up. That's probably the only gripe that I have with Daisy. Otherwise, she's pretty cool. Karen is another female in this book that I really enjoyed. She is the keyboardist for the Six, and she is her own person. She doesn't wear really skimpy clothes. She likes to be covered up. She likes to wear pants and turtlenecks and stuff. And even though she's in a band and it would be more appealing for men if she wore mini skirts and stuff like that, she doesn't care, and she does what makes her comfortable, and I love that so much. Another character I want to touch upon is Billy Dune. Billy is the leader of the Six. He is also the main vocalist. He is married to Camilla, and he has a ton of issues. We see through this book him dealing with alcoholism and going through rehab, trying to be a good father, a good husband, and still leading the band and going on tour and all of that. And that's a lot to handle for one person. I like seeing the struggle and him really trying to be a good person. And no one is perfect, and that's what we get from this book, that everyone has flaws, and sometimes that's okay. You love people despite their flaws. And that's one thing I really loved about Billy and Camilla's relationship, is they both mess up so many times, but at the end of the day, they have love and they still choose to be together. There are so many good quotes in this book, but two of my absolute favorite, one is the one that everyone knows. It is Daisy's quote at the beginning of the book, when she says, "I had absolutely no interest in being somebody else's muse. I am not a muse. I am the somebody." End of effing story. The second quote that I love comes from Camilla, also towards the beginning of the book. She says, "It didn't seem right to me that his weakest self got to decide how my life was going to turn out, what my family was going to look like. I got to decide that." She takes control over her life situation, and she doesn't let somebody else dictate her life. And that is so freaking badass. I love it so much. The ending of this book also really surprised me. It turns out that the person interviewing everyone is Billy and Camilla's daughter. Julia is the one that is interviewing everyone, and that is so sweet. I don't know, it just feels like it all comes full circle. When Camilla dies and we find that out, and her note to her girls, the very, very, very last thing, oh my gosh, my heart! I hope that Daisy and Billy get to live the rest of their days happy and together, because that is so sweet. Now, digging a little deeper into the Happy Ever After playlist, Sloane Monroe suffers from complicated grief, and Abby has a way of writing about really serious things, but making it lighthearted at the same time. These really heavy subjects, like this is a spoiler for The Friend Zone if you haven't read her first book, which kind of goes along with this, but Kristen suffered with fertility issues, and that's also something that a lot of women go through. But that book as well was just really fun and easy to read. It's really lighthearted. And so I really appreciate that Abby can bring these things to light and kind of talk about them, but in a lighthearted way. So that's something that's really unique about Abby that I really enjoy. A really fun thing about this book is that Abby had put together an actual playlist of real songs. Her playlist, I believe, is on Spotify. You may be able to find it on other places, but it corresponds with each chapter. And I was able to listen to most of the songs while reading the chapters. And that was such a special touch to the book. It really just added another layer to it. I can't believe Abby wrote in the tissue holder vaginas made out of yarn, because Abby actually received one of those. You can go check out Abby's page. I'll have all of her info down below. She has a post about this woman from Etsy who makes vaginas out of yarn. It's freaking hilarious. And I love that she just casually slips that in. Another thing that she puts in here that kind of goes with her real life is she got a painting done of her dogs hunting. So Stuntman Mike, she actually has a dog named Stuntman Mike, and he and her hunting dog Tess were painted into like hunting scenes. So that was another little nod that I enjoyed. This book was a tad predictable, but it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it. I still enjoyed every moment of it. It was written so well that I didn't even care. I just was happy to be reading it. So in this book, we see Sloane really struggling to move on and really heal and give herself permission to be happy. And that is something that just touches my heart. That's something that hits really close to home for me. There are so many great moments. Another great moment is Kristen finds out that Jason is Jackson Waters, and she calls Sloane. And Josh is in the background like, hey, tell her I hope she shaved her legs. I just love that Josh and Sloane have the kind of relationship where he can just say something like that. And it's just funny for everyone. Kristen is the best wing woman. Again, I love their friendship so much. We also meet someone special in this book. We meet Josh's cousin, Adrian, from St. Paul, Minnesota, who is the male lead in Abby's third book coming out in the spring called Life's Too Short. And I think it takes place in St. Paul, Minnesota. So far, I know that Life's Too Short is about a girl named Vanessa and a boy named Adrian Copeland. So I love that we get that introduction in this book. And I cannot wait for, I think it's April 2021. I also really enjoyed the scenes in Minnesota in this book. Jason takes Sloane into the Boundary Waters, and that is, I've never actually been there. I've always wanted to go, and hopefully someday I'll get to go. They also mentioned Duluth, and I go to Duluth at least once a year, usually in the summer, but it's such a beautiful city. I love going to Duluth. It's not that far of a drive from the cities, but I loved seeing that in this book. I think one of the first romance books I read, I was maybe in 6th grade, maybe 5th grade, but I remember I had read like every fantasy book that there was in my school library, and my librarian recommended a romance novel to me. It was kind of short, and of course it was PG because it was in like the section everyone could go in. And I can't quite remember the title, but it took place in Minnesota during the winter time. There was ice skating on Como Lake, and I really need to find that because I would love to read that again. But that's what I hope Life's Too Short is going to be like. I hope that there are places that I will recognize, and that just makes everything so much more exciting. One thing that these two books have in common is that there are musicians in both books, and the musicians go on tour. And we see how hard the tour life can be for musicians. We see their struggles. I thought that that was very interesting to see how it was in Daisy Jones and the Six, with Billy struggling to be away from his family, and in the Happy Ever playlist, how Sloane goes along with Jason and seeing her struggles. So that's just a little bit of two different books with some parallels in them. So those are some of my thoughts on Daisy Jones and the Six and the Happy Ever After playlist. I definitely recommend these to anyone who wants a fun, quick, easy read. If you're interested in reading the Happy Ever After playlist, I definitely recommend reading the first book, The Friend Zone. You don't have to read it, but it'll give you so much more feels if you do. Please let me know down below if you have read either of these books and what your favorite parts were for each of them, or if you want to read one of these books. Let me know down below as well. So thanks for watching this video, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Bye!